it's the obvious way to read something in the 90s in American culture as being in that like the end of history window, to use like the Francis Fukuyama phrase of like the period between the end of the Cold War and like 9/11, where America kind of felt like they had just won. Like American culture, economics, politics was just completely dominant. But I couldn't avoid that obvious framing when we got to like one point. There's a Merrill Lynch ad, like a big expensive long ad where they have like the recreations of the fall of the Berlin Wall and like pro-democracy protests in China, interspersed with images of like powerful businessmen striding between the sun-dappled canyons of Wall Street, which ends with the slogan, "The world is 10 years old."
The world is 10 years old.
And like, how could that you not be more like on the nose, like end of history? And I feel like that kind of cockiness and brashness that was a part of American culture at the time feels like it really goes hand in glove with Hollywood's cultural cockiness that we see in these Oscars. And like, look at the movies nominated for Best Picture. So there's 5 movies nominated for Best Picture. 3 of them are World War II movies. You know, World War II kind of feels like the origin story of the, you know, American century or the Pax Americana or whatever. The idea that, you know, America took over the world. 2 of them are about American soldiers, heroic American soldiers. Thin Red Line, it's maybe debatable how heroic they are, but you have the Thin Red Line and you have Saving Private Ryan. Also, Life is Beautiful, which is different. It's a Holocaust movie, but that also has the kind of pseudo ahistorical ending where the American soldiers like save the day or free the Auschwitz-like camp, even though, you know, real Auschwitz was liberated by the Soviet Red Army. So the 3 World War II movies and 2 Elizabethan dramas. So 2 movies about the golden age of a global superpower, the Elizabethan England. So that feels like there's kind of these echoes of like both the origin and the comparison point for like, we live in a golden age. And I feel like just having 3 World War II movies and 2 Elizabethan movies also kind of just fits that mold of this kind of sort of brazen, unapologetic, very self-assured American culture that is being reflected through the ceremony. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Oscars Outsider, the show where everything's made up and the points don't matter. I'm your host, Dylan Ferguson, and with me is, of course, Craig Midwinter.
Howdy.
And our very special guest, Sean O'Rourke. Hey, Sean, how's it going?
Hey, good. I'm very happy to be here not mattering.
So we are going to have our first kind of proper episode of our awards season mini-series, Oscars Outsider. The way we're going to be doing it is we're going to start things off with a little bit of news and gossip and updates on the awards race real quick. Then we're going to get into our main feature section for this episode, which is going to be a breakdown of the 71st Annual Academy Awards, Hollywood's biggest night. We're talking about the 1999 ceremony. And we'll finish things off with a quick little capsule review and thoughts on one of this year's contenders. And we couldn't resist talking about everybody's favorite movie about the inventors of that little fishnet thing that a Christmas ham comes in, Hamnet. So it just quickly, just to bring us up to date on where we are on the awards show now, since we did our first preview episode. We dropped our first preview episode right before the Golden Globes nominations came out. They are out now. There are also several other award nominations are out, like the Critics' Choice Awards, New York's Critics Circle, LA Critics Circle, I think. But we're kind of just focusing on the Golden Globes because that's one of the races that we're watching. And if you missed our first episode, me and Craig did a sort of fantasy draft where we picked films that we think are going to get a lot of awards this season, but especially in the Oscars. You know what? Let's just quickly look at the Golden Globes Awards before we get into kind of our fantasy draft. Just going to mention what's up for the 2 main Best Picture categories. We're not going to get into the acting and all that other stuff. We'll maybe talk a bit more about the Golden Globes next episode, because that will be like a Golden Globes preview show before the ceremony drops. But quickly, let's just resume what's going on with the two best motion picture categories, because of course with the Globes they split that into drama and musical comedy on the other hand. So for their best picture drama, they have Frankenstein, Hamnet, It Was Just an Accident, Sentimental Value, Sinners, and The Secret Agent. And then in comedy musical, Blue Moon, Begonia, Marty Supreme, No Other Choice, Nouvelle Vague, and One Battle After Another.
What's your gut reaction here, Dylan? I am so curious as to what you think about this.
So the thing that jumps out at me right away is the way that in musical comedy, they really stretch the definition of the word comedy to squeeze all those movies in without putting a single token musical in there, which is kind of concerning for me since I'm holding Wicked as one of my picks. The fact
I would have expected that one to be a bit more popular.
That's the one that jumps out at me. That the fact that they made no space for Wicked at all, while making space for two Linklater movies and musical comedy, neither of which I would have thought would sneak in there. What was your initial reaction, Craig, to that?
Yeah, I think the glaring omission of Wicked is the biggest surprise here, and Linklater coming out strong is also huge here. I've got some other thoughts regarding some of my picks here. It's just looking at the nomination slate here, I think like Searchlight is basically dead in the water here, and that was kind of what I was hoping was going to grab some value. My last two picks are both Searchlight films, and there's no representation for Anne Lee or Is This Thing On? And so, I mean, I think my best shot of seeing them at the Oscars is maybe in the In Memoriam category.
So if you didn't catch the first episode, like I mentioned, we did a bit of a fantasy draft thing after the Golden Globe noms came out, because we are counting points for those. Craig is slightly in the head here. I think the numbers were 76 points for you, 74 points for me.
Something like that.
Yeah, you're getting a lot out of One Battle After Another, and a lot out of Sentimental Value as well. I'm getting a lot out of Sinners and a few other titles down there. We also included the option in our rules, and watch that episode if you want to go through the rules or read it or whatever. We included the possibility to be able to drop a title and replace it with another at just 1 point during award season. And we also have the possibility to do unlimited trades. Craig, I feel like you're thinking about something here. What are you stewing over?
Yeah, well, honestly, I don't have a lot of faith in my last two picks. Like I said, even my third to last pick, Jay Kelly, is not looking that great. So I'm definitely going to exercise my option to drop Is This Thing On at least, because it got completely snubbed here. So
you can't abandon Coop. You can't flee the Coop.
Sorry, I'm officially leaving the Coop troop.
No.
Can Dylan pick it up on the waiver wire?
if he wanted to,
I can,
could.
But that would burn my only swap, which I'm sorry, I'm not using it on not just this thing on. So
are you going to drop anything?
I was considering it, but you know what? I threw this over to you first, so I want to know what you would pick up to replace it with before I move.
So I think just because I am ahead in points, you should have the option to pick up whatever you would like first.
Oh, that's sweet of you.
I don't know. That seems fair.
Okay. I was debating this one. I was thinking all of my movies did actually get at least like a point. So nothing on my roster is like just looking completely dead in the water right now. Though some don't look very strong. I was thinking of trying to pick up Surratt before you do, because I feel like that's been getting some buzz. Yeah, is that where you're going to?
That was where I was going to go too. Yeah, but that's fine.
So I think I would. Now, you know what? You fucking take it, man. I don't want to.
No, because toes. You know what? Depending on what you drop, I might want to pick it up. So
okay.
I'm open to this.
Okay. I think I'm going to drop Weapons, which was my last pick. It was the 16th overall pick, so it's the last pick in our draft. I think I'm going to drop Weapons and replace it with Surratt. I still think Amy Madigan is a real front runner for supporting actress. I don't think the movie gets anything else. And in the actor bonus, I did pick Amy Madigan, so I'm still going to get some points from those nominations and potential wins. But I think I'm willing to lose it because I don't think it's going to be up for anything else. Whereas Surratt looks like it could be like a potential riser that might even sneak into the Best Picture race.
Okay, that is interesting. So I'm not going to pick up Weapons. I was kind of hoping you might drop Train Dreams, but I think dropping Weapons is smarter. I see like Train Dreams picking up a lot of steam, choo-choo, down the line here.
I feel like it can go either way. I think it could be completely forgotten by the time we get to the Oscar noms, or not. I have no idea, but I'm going to hold on that one. Let's see where it develops. I was considering proposing a trade, but now I'm not too sure I want to do it anymore. I'm not going to do it, but I'll tell you what I was thinking about proposing, just in case you want to like pick that option up at some point, or I do. I was considering proposing Avatar for Jay Kelly. I'm holding Avatar. You're holding Jay Kelly. You just said that you're saying Jay Kelly looks weak. I just feel like it's still got a rising potential in terms of like supporting actor, screenplay, possibly Best Picture. And I feel like it's crazy to say that Avatar had a weak opening because it was like a massive opening that's going to make it the biggest movie of the year, but it's like weak compared to The Way of Water. And
right.
And I was banking on Avatar getting a Best Picture nomination just because the first two did. So I was like, track record makes sense. I used my third pick on it. Now I'm not feeling very confident about it, but I think I'm going to withdraw that trade. But I was very close to proposing that. Would you have taken that if I did propose that, Jay Kelly for Avatar?
So no, I wouldn't, just because I do feel like there's a lot of room for Jay Kelly still here. I think like one of the things that I'm thinking about in terms of what I'm going to replace is this thing on is the fact that Avatar, like you said, it feels like it doesn't have a ton of steam here. I still feel like they're going to want to have like some sort of crowd pleaser blockbuster within that Best Picture, but I'm not sure that it's going to be Avatar, like the third James Cameron movie that people don't really like.
What would it be then? Because you're not big on Wicked's chances either. So if you don't think Wicked's going to be Best Picture nominee, and you don't think Avatar is going to be Best Picture nominee, what's the token blockbuster?
I think Wicked might. I think the token blockbuster might actually be F1, and that's what I'm going to pick up because I think that it will actually get some traction in the below the line categories like
sound
editing
design
and sound
design, absolutely.
And
editing,
score even. I think that it could clean up around that area. So that's what I want to do.
I think that's a really strong pickup. Yeah, that's a good option to have. All right. Sean, did anything surprise you about what I just read out of the Golden Globes Best Picture nominees in the two categories?
No, I'm out of touch with the new movies so far this year, so it's all a surprise to me so far.
That sounds delightful.
Yeah, I gotta like cram before the Oscars like I normally do. But
you've got lots of time. There's still 3 months, well, 2.5, I guess. But
so
there's a lot of time.
I have until February to start thinking about it.
Yeah, must be nice.
It is.
All right. So let's move on to our main section tonight. We are in each episode of Oscars Outsider leading up to Hollywood's biggest night going to be examining some like topic or issue or some bit of history surrounding award season in general, but Oscars in particular. What we wanted to talk about tonight, as I mentioned, is the 71st Annual Academy Awards, which is the awards for the 1998 movies, so the ones that were held in March of 1999. A lot to talk about there. Craig, you suggested this topic. So why don't you just kind of let me know what exactly was it that made you think that this is like a particularly fascinating or Oscar-y Oscars? Yeah,
so I think that this Oscars is one that really stands out in regards to changing the way that studios started campaigning and really gathering momentum behind these movies. And Miramax really changed the game up with their Shakespeare in Love campaign. Leading into this season, Saving Private Ryan was seen as like a possible runaway Best Picture film to beat. And then on the night of, Shakespeare in Love really dominated. And it was largely as a result of just how hard Harvey Weinstein and Miramax campaigned for this movie. And as a result, all the other studios changed the way that they think about campaigning films during the lead up to the Oscars. So that, I think, is what made this really compelling. It's also a Oscar ceremony that I remember very clearly watching from start to finish. Like, I've got memories of some previous Oscars. Like, I remember Celine Dion at the 70th Oscars the year before. But this is one that stands out as one that I remember watching from start to finish. And, you know, as I was rewatching this in preparation for this, when Whoopi came out dressed as the Queen, I was like, it brought back so many memories. So I'm excited to talk about this.
Yeah, me too. I'm pretty sure this is the first Oscars I watched. You know, we would have been around like 13 or something at that time. And like that. As thereabouts. And I'm pretty sure that this is the first time I watched it on TV. So for me, there is kind of the nostalgia element. And I had the same experience of rewatching it as soon as Whoopi came out in the dress. Because I was like, I don't know if I actually remember it. I just feel like I do. And then when I see Whoopi dressed as Queen Elizabeth in whiteface, I'm like, oh, I remember seeing this shit. It's definitely like a year that feels, I don't want to say like peak Oscars, but it's at a period where they were kind of at a high point in popularity in terms of like viewership. This was the first Oscars to be held on a Sunday. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that. That's crazy.
Yeah, they're usually held on Mondays before. They changed it to Sunday because they thought they would get more viewership, and also to help with gridlock for people getting to the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion. But the previous year's Oscars, which was the Titanic Oscars, had been the most watched ceremony ever. So they really kind of pumped up this one in the hopes of getting even bigger numbers. And they did. And it was even bigger. I don't think it stands as the most watched ceremony, but it's up there. It's like one of the most watched. It's one of the most bloated. You know, we rewatched it. It's, you know, the Oscars is a slog at the best of times. Let's be honest. You know, we're talking about this shit because we love it. But, you know, rewatching an Oscars ceremony, it's a slog. And this is a pretty bloated ceremony. It's 4+ hours. Like, by the time they got to like this long segment of a dude tap dancing to John Williams' mournful
awesome,
score, just Saving Private Ryan.
Amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, but I'm like,
so much
man. And like, how many montages are there on this thing? There are so many montages, but that's kind of the vibe of it. And that's like one of the things that's interesting to me about it. It's like at this point where there's a sort of like cockiness to it. Like, one of the first jokes that Whoopi makes is she's like, yeah, and you know, go ahead and write your little pieces about how long it is. We know it's long, okay? And like, people, it's like an applause line. Like, you know, when they make jokes about the Oscars being long these days, it's like somewhat apologetic. And like at that era where they're really at like such this kind of like, it feels like a high crest of like cultural presence and power. It's like, it's very brash and self-assured and cocky.
Yeah. Totally. The amount of like star power here is also like really remarkable compared to when you're watching a more modern ceremony. And I think, like, you know,
they don't have any tap dancers nowadays.
Yeah, but like this Marvelization of cinema that a lot of people talk about has really changed the way that we think of the movie star. There's no longer stars that are able to really drive films to popularity. It's all about the franchises that are able to drive things to popularity. And as a result, all the stars have been dimmed somewhat. And so when you watch these old ceremonies, you look at these people and they just seem so much more iconic. And I'm sure part of that is the nostalgia, but a part of that is the fact that, you know, stars aren't these investment vehicles for these studios anymore. It's all the franchises now.
Timmy Chalamet standing on top of the sphere is going to debate you on the point that stars are no longer selling movies, but he might be the only star of his he is the only star of his generation actually selling movies, basically single-handedly now. But you're right, and that all kind of goes part and parcel with that idea that this feels like a very Oscars-y Oscars and a very like non-apologetic brash one, which for me just kind of fits the idea of it being like 1999. Like they make a big deal about it being like the last Oscars of the millennium, and it's kind of like it's the obvious way to read something in the 90s in American culture as being in that like the end of history window, to use like the Francis Fukuyama phrase of like the period between the end of the Cold War and like 9/11, where America kind of felt like they had just won. Like American culture, economics, politics was just completely dominant, and there was no real opposition, and the whole world felt like it was falling into order. But you kind of can't. I couldn't avoid that obvious framing when we got to like one point. There's a Merrill Lynch ad in this like the YouTube version I was watching, which was just like an old VHS upload, which is the best way to watch these things because then you're immersed in that era. But there's this ad by the investment banking company Merrill Lynch, a long one, like a big expensive long ad where they have like the recreations of the fall of the Berlin Wall and like pro-democracy protests in China, interspersed with images of like powerful businessmen striding between the sun-dappled canyons of Wall Street, which ends with the slogan, "The world is 10 years old." And like, how could that you not be more like on the nose, like end of history? And I feel like that kind of cockiness and brashness that was a part of American culture at the time feels like it really goes hand in glove with Hollywood's like cultural cockiness that we see in these Oscars. And like, look at the movies nominated for Best Picture. So there's 5 movies nominated for Best Picture. 3 of them are World War II movies. World War II kind of feels like the origin story of the, American century or the Pax Americana or whatever. The idea that, America took over the world. 2 of them are about American soldiers, heroic American soldiers. Thin Red Line, it's maybe debatable how heroic they are, but you have the Thin Red Line and you have Saving Private Ryan. Also, Life is Beautiful, which is different. Beautiful. It's a Holocaust movie, but that also has the kind of pseudo ahistorical ending where the American soldiers like save the day or free the Auschwitz-like camp, even though real Auschwitz was liberated by the Soviet Red Army. But you have the 3 World War II movies and 2 Elizabethan dramas. So 2 movies about the golden age of a global superpower, the Elizabethan England. So that feels like there's kind of these echoes of like both the origin and the comparison point for like, we live in a golden age. And I feel like just having 3 World War II movies and 2 Elizabethan movies also kind of just fits that mold of this kind of sort of brazen, unapologetic, very self-assured American culture that is being reflected through the ceremony.
Yeah, totally. And even some of the movies that are kind of on the peripheries here that aren't like in the Best Picture conversation, but just give you a little bit of a sample size of, the taste of the movie going public in America at that point, like Armageddon, a movie about the end of the world and like humanity banding together. Just the appetite that the American public has for this, like Americans saving the day and the world coming together under their arms is just like really speaks to the mindset of Hollywood and the American public at that point.
I think the thing that really points it out as being in a golden age is Whoopi Goldberg makes a comment about the government spending $50 million on something and then says, we could have made 5 good movies for that much. Can't do that anymore.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
So yeah, Craig, you mentioned the main thing that you find fascinating is like the campaigning angle and the kind of whole Shakespeare in love versus Saving Private Ryan thing. And that's really interesting to me too, because it also kind of, it becomes a bit of a kind of classic Hollywood studio system versus the indie distribution system story as well. Sort of. I mean, that's kind of complicated, but I think in the press at the time, it was often portrayed as Steven Spielberg versus Harvey Weinstein, which is kind of two of the big colossi of Hollywood in the 1990s. And that's kind of an interesting angle because you've got Spielberg, the kind of boy prince of Hollywood, this well-liked mensch who has dominated the box office at multiple occasions, had an Oscar at that point because he'd won for Schindler's List in 1993, which was his first Best Picture win after several films of his had Best Picture nominations. But for a long time, he was kind of the guy who gets nominations but never gets wins. He still has a record for The Color Purple, which had 11 nominations and 0 wins. That's the most nominated movie to not get wins before he broke through with Schindler's List, but was still very, very awards hungry at that point, according to a lot of people at the time. He had just founded DreamWorks Studios very recently with Jeffrey Katzenberg, formerly of Disney, and David Geffen, the music mogul. They had just founded DreamWorks, and his first movie under DreamWorks was Amistad, which had a few Oscar nominations but didn't hit the Best Picture, and really wanted accounts of Spielberg say that he was really craving that kind of artistic recognition. He is a guy who craves recognition, according to people who know him, and he had the commercial recognition wrapped up for a long time, but was really looking for that kind of artistic recognition. And Saving Private Ryan felt like a slam dunk for a long time, like you said, Craig, for most of the year, until Harvey Weinstein tried to flip everything upside down when he released Shakespeare in Love in December, and Harvey really wanted that Oscar too. Now Harvey also he had a movie that won Best Picture. He had The English Patient 2 years earlier, on which he had his usual executive producer credit, and he took a full producer credit on Shakespeare in Love, apparently because he wanted to be on the stage getting his own Oscar, which only full producers do, which he did, of course. Spoiler alert, he won. But it is kind of this interesting clash of those two personalities, the Spielberg and then Weinstein, who obviously everybody knows now was a serial sexual predator, wasn't well known at the time, but was well known that he was a huge fucking asshole. Everybody knew that he was a very tenacious, bullying, angry bull of a man.
When he calls his kids rotten, it doesn't feel like a joke.
Yeah, totally. Yeah.
Though his rotten kids got a much nicer shout out at last year's Oscars when Adrian Brody, their stepdad, spoke more kindly of them.
Yeah, that's right.
So that's really interesting. But to just kind of dig into the indie versus studio aspect of it, you have Miramax was the flagship independent distributor at the time, though the definition of independent movie is obviously getting very blurry at this point because Shakespeare in Love is an expensive period drama with stars. Yeah. But Miramax was still considered an independent studio, even though it had been had been hooked up to Walt Disney Studios since 1993, was technically a branch of Walt Disney Studios, a relationship that was the brainchild of Jeffrey Katzenberg when he was with Disney, because he was the chairman of Walt Disney between mid 80s to mid 90s. And he was the guy who convinced Disney that they should invest in buying Miramax to get a bit of extra cash and some clout. And that gave Miramax those extra deep pockets, even though Miramax was already the dominant indie distributor, going back to kind of the origin point of the 90s American indie revolution, which is usually placed at Sex, Lies, and Videotape, the Steven Soderbergh movie from 1989, which was bought out of Sundance by Miramax, and that kind of led to both Sundance being a huge deal and Miramax being a huge deal. Long story short, it had that kind of that thirst for independent movies for these companies that are picking them up, bloating their budgets, distributing them as much as possible, kind of really came to a head in the 1997 Oscars for the 96 movies, which was the one where The English Patient, the Miramax movie, won, but also had a bunch of other independent movies that were among the nominees. That year, Billy Crystal made a joke at the Oscar ceremony. He was like, "Welcome to Sundance by the Sea." Just just riffing on what everybody understood was this like idea of like independent film has permeated Hollywood and is like muscling out the studios. The very next year was the Titanic year, so that was a kind of big like the studios are back in business, and that was kind of like between The English Patient and Titanic, that kind of set the stage for the clash between Harvey Weinstein's Miramax and Steven Spielberg's and Jeffrey Katzenberg's DreamWorks, and which was Shakespeare versus Ryan. And Harvey rolled it out hard, as he suggested. The premiere in Detroit, or the premiere in New York City.
Detroit premiere in New York wild.
City. That would be kind of weird. Yeah, the premiere in New York had Hillary Clinton like presenting the movie, a good friend of Harvey Weinstein's at the time, presenting the movie before like watching it by his side. So he was like hitting all those, trying to make it the most important movie possible, like right from the start. And then that led to a huge blitz of campaigning in the press, of for consideration ads, radio ads, pamphlets that were left all over cafes across West Los Angeles. Harvey bullying all this Miramax employees to like search their Rolodex for anybody who's an Academy member, set up screenings for them, call them ceaselessly, harass them into like seeing if they're going to vote for the film.
He was setting up like screenings in like retirement homes for Academy members. Like, he was
because this was like the Kennedys.
Yeah, before the reforms they made like whatever 6 or 7 years ago, like most Academy members were like geriatric. So it was a good strategy to find out which retirement home in Southern California does whatever actor who was big in the 1930s live in, and arrange to get him a screening so he votes for your movie.
Wow.
Yeah, I'm curious what you think of like this win on the face of it, like setting aside all of the campaigning, looking at these two movies. What do you think of this win overall? Do you think it's a deserved win? How do you think it holds up?
So to be honest, I haven't rewatched either movie preparing for this, and it's been a long time since I've seen both of them. Neither movie I'm very fond of, especially, so I don't have like a strong opinion one way or the other. Saving Private Ryan is definitely not the kind of Spielberg I like the best. I like a lot of Spielberg movies a lot. I love a few Spielberg movies. Saving Private Ryan, for me, in my memories anyways, it's been a long time since I saw it, is him at his most like kind of obvious, most emotionally manipulative, and the themes are just of like American heroism and the definition of courage and whatever just feel just kind of too directed on the nose, and the fact that you have that also next to the Thin Red Line. I don't necessarily love the Thin Red Line either, but the Thin Red Line is like more in that kind of a lyrical humanist tradition of looking at war, right. Which, and not in that kind of like kid in the 50s, like gung-ho definition of courage thing. So the Thin Red Line is definitely the kind of movie I'd gravitate more towards. It got nothing at all in the Oscars, despite being a Best Picture nominee. So having those both in the nominees is also, I think, like just in terms of quality of movie, probably a disservice to the Spielberg movie. 98 was a weird year for double movies, by the way. In addition to having Thin Red Line and Saving Private Ryan, you've got A Bug's Life and Ants, and then you mentioned Armageddon. There's also Deep Impact. Like a lot of doubling, and there's just two Elizabethan dramas that were among the nominees as well.
I rewatched Shakespeare in Love, and I loved it, actually. I think that this is maybe a hot take because I know that everyone likes to dog on Shakespeare in Love as a win that doesn't really hold up, but I feel like the script just has like so much life in it, and it's like there's something about the optimism of it that I just find so pure and also like nostalgic. But I don't know. I just think the script is just like so smart, and like it's a lot denser than I remembered it being. And I think it's really funny, and there's some like really great performances in it. So on a rewatch, I was really surprised. I don't have very strong memories of Saving Private Ryan either way. So I feel like just, at least in my own mental catalog, it's not something that holds up that well, or like retains a lot of mental space for me. But I was surprised on a rewatch of Shakespeare in Love how good it is.
A great choice that they made was asking Tom Stoppard to do a rewrite of the script. He's credited as co-writer for a script that was originally written by Mark Norman. So I think probably a lot of what you enjoy about the movie in terms of being clever and well written is probably it probably has a lot more to do with Tom Stoppard than with Mark Norman's original script. But,
absolutely. It feels like Stoppard, right?
Yeah. Sean, do you have any thoughts on either of those movies? Have you seen either of them at any time?
I have
recently?
never seen Shakespeare in Love.
Watch it.
I do like. Seeing that Stoppard had the writing credit. I was like, oh, I should watch that. It didn't. The idea of it didn't connect with me when I was 12 or 13. But
yeah, totally.
I think now I'd be more forgiving to it. Saving Private Ryan, like the same as you guys. It's not any. It's not an interesting kind of war movie. It doesn't have much to say other than just the celebration of the myth of it. Like, so I haven't seen that in probably 20 years, but I don't know. Each one kind of feels like, yeah, sure, that's an Oscar movie to me.
Yeah.
No controversy over the win. Kind of slides off me.
Yeah. No, it was very controversial at the time. I think so much of what we're talking about, like Weinstein's full court press to get it over the line, is, to be fair, the narrative that was heavily pushed by DreamWorks personnel after the win. Especially Terry Press, who was the press secretary for DreamWorks, who used to work with Disney, so used to have to relight with Weinstein in those days. Apparently, she was very intense in those days too, and they really tried to push the idea in the press that Weinstein had bought the Oscar by campaigning so hard. And Weinstein tried to push back the narrative by tallying the number of print ads and showing that there was actually more print ads for Ryan than there were for Shakespeare. So the kind of like back and forth continued afterwards. So the idea that Shakespeare is like a non-deserving winner, that, like you alluded to that, Craig, I think a lot of people do kind of reference Shakespeare in Love as like this one of those movies that won the Oscar that shouldn't have. Part of that might be just DreamWorks spin that we've internalized and learned to like regurgitate.
Yeah, for sure.
It's pretty interesting. It did kind of feel like a shock at the ceremony. Spielberg did get his best director, which he dedicated to his dad, Paul Dano, and because he was in World War II. He was I think he was a bomber pilot in World War II, Spielberg's dad. And he talked during the making of the movie how it was like for him it was like his way of showing his dad that he's interested in his life and his stuff, in a way of like apologizing to his dad too, because he'd always been there as like one of cinema's most like hardcore Oedipal mommy's boys. He had generally been like very harsh towards his dad, and I think for him doing Saving Private Ryan was like step one of like forgiving my dad and showing him that I think he's cool. And step two was probably making The Fablemans.
Yeah, sorry, I was filming mom doing that sexy dance for Seth Rogen. Here's a movie about your war or whatever.
I'm still going to make the most weak sauce actor play you, but I'm sorry about Baby T. And then like the fallout of that too is that when we like DreamWorks went full court press for the next Oscar seasons following up on that, like you said, Craig, this is kind of like often seen as the origin point of that kind of hardcore campaigning, mudslinging, overspending. Well, DreamWorks got the next 3 Oscars in a row: American Beauty, Gladiator, and A Beautiful Mind. Though all of them beating out strong Miramax contenders. Though Miramax came back afterwards with Chicago. So there was this was kind of the start of this long tug of war between DreamWorks and Miramax at every Oscars for several years. So kind of the Spielberg and Katzenberg versus Weinstein was kind of just playing out chapter 1 in these Oscars.
Yeah, I think that, like, aside from the Shakespeare in Love, like, rewatching this, there was also a lot of other, like, interesting narratives within the ceremony that that stood out to me. Like, obviously the moment with Roberto Benigni getting up on top of the chairs after winning Best Foreign Language Film, it was just like such an iconic moment. That's like a moment that stands out in my mind, like second to like almost any other Oscar moment that I remember watching live. Maybe the slap is another one that like stands out in terms of like big Oscar memories, but like him getting up on the chairs and like waving his arms and losing balance and just like being so overjoyed in his speech, and then like getting up a second time and being like, I used up all my English. It was just like I remember that so clearly, and it was a joy to rewatch that.
So I can't stand that obnoxious imp. I have no patience for his bullshit. And to be honest, when you suggested this topic, one of the reasons why I was excited was like, oh, great, I can tell everybody how much I cannot stand Roberto Benigni. Personally, I find his antics really annoying. Okay, it is kind of funny, like when he says like in his like broken English, like, I wish I was Jupiter so I could kidnap you all and lay down with you and make love to you all. Like moments when you're literally like, what the hell are you talking about? Are fun. Like he brought a huge dose of chaos to the ceremony, and that's great. I just feel like he was selling his eccentricity so hard, and he had been doing it all award season. And I'm kind of annoyed that everybody bought into it. And he bought that Best Actor win through being the lovable eccentric foreigner. He schmoozed with tons of Academy members leading up to the Oscar ceremony, all bankrolled by Weinstein, of course, because Miramax distributed Life is Beautiful, which was the highest grossing foreign movie in America at the time. Heavily pushed by Weinstein again. So that was his other big winner that night. But he did like a huge charm offensive, whining and dining as many Academy members as possible, and showing them what a lovable eccentric he is. And personally, I can't stand him, and I can't stand that garbage movie. I hate Life is Beautiful. I think it is just a hop, skip, and a back of a chair jump away from being Holocaust denial. And it's kind of grotesque, and every like bit of sentiment and every joke is like so obvious and just so lowest common denominator. I felt like that movie was like, for a while it felt like required viewing, and I just like can't stand how that movie was forced out of throats, because I think it's like such a simple, dumb movie that has like such a dumb approach to it has the Forrest Gump approach to the Holocaust, where it's like, if you're just kind of ignorant and pretend it's not happening, everything will go great. And they do, and it does.
That must have drank me about 15 Fantas.
I think we need to get a remake of this done in 2025 America, where there's with the ICE agents and someone just pretending that
one battle
the raid
after
is
another.
not going on.
Yeah.
I still haven't seen Life is Beautiful, but I'm definitely going to now that you've called it Holocaust denial. Sounds like an interesting watch.
So were there any interesting like snubs for you during this ceremony?
You mean in terms of people who didn't win?
Well, either people who didn't win or like films that weren't nominated at all.
Yeah. The fact, like, I love the Truman Show, so the fact that it's kind of represented in the ceremony, like Ed Harris has a nomination. I think that's the only nomination it got.
Didn't Peter Weir get a nomination?
Oh, possibly. You might be right about that. Let's see if I can look that up real quick.
My ears always perk up.
You're right.
Peter Weir.
You're right about that. Peter Weir absolutely got a nomination. So that's kind of despite it not being nominated for Best Picture, Peter Weir was not, and so was Roberto Benigni for Best Director. I'm like, that's not. It's like a sitcom. All right, enough about Benigni. But yeah, you're right about that. So, but no picture and no actor for Jim Carrey, though they did pay him the compliment of making him do a give out an award and pretend to cry about not getting a nomination. So real nice stuff. But yeah, that's kind of like in terms of like when they just kind of mention a movie, I'm like, oh yeah, that movie came out this year. The Truman Show is one that like I love a lot. So
yeah,
that's one that I would have been happy to see more love for.
Yeah, that's where I was going with the question. I really wish that at least Jim Carrey got a nomination for Best Actor on that one. I think it definitely should have been in the Best Picture category. If this was a year, after they had expanded it from 5 to 10 nominees, I think it's definitely in that conversation. And that's one of the reasons why I love the fact that we have an expanded field now. We have the opportunity for more films to be within that conversation. So I really wish that got the nomination there.
Sean, were there any movies that like came up glancingly in the ceremony that you're like, oh, that movie, damn?
The Truman Show was the one that stood out that I had kind of forgotten was 98 because it doesn't like factor into any of the Best Picture buzz. The one that surprised me to see nominated when I was looking over them was Affliction, which a movie I hadn't seen until recently, and I was like, "Oh, sweet, Affliction!" But it in my mind, it doesn't feel like a huge movie at the time. It's like a Paul Schrader adaptation of a Russell Banks novel. But maybe it was really big. I don't know. I was young at the time.
It figured in the actors, Nick Nolte was nominated and James Coburn
he won for it, right?
As well. Yeah, James Coburn won for that. So yeah, I guess it did figure pretty heavily. I feel like, did Schrader get a screenwriting nomination?
Oh, did he for Adapted?
Yeah. Oh, no, he didn't. Never mind. But I haven't actually seen that one, but that's on my list because I do like Schrader, and that was also one where I was like, oh yeah, that movie exists.
Yeah, it's like Winter Sad Boys. It's great.
Awesome. The one moment of the ceremony that I think we also need to bring up is there was an honorary Oscar given to Elia Kazan, which was a very controversial moment. Even before the ceremony started, there were some people protesting outside the Dorothy Chandler Pavilion as the ceremony was going on. Chris Rock makes a glancing reference to it when he comes out. I think he's the only one who actually addresses the controversy during the ceremony.
Costner make a dig at him when he's doing his presentation? He says about all the directors. I was just watching it before we started again. He says something about the directors like, or you could just be mean your whole life and Marty will make a 3-minute video about your life and show it to everybody, which I thought was a dig at Kazan.
Or was it at Sinatra? Because Marty did the montage about Sinatra.
Oh, okay. About Sinatra.
Mm-hmm. Though he did present or he did introduce Kazan alongside Bobby De Niro in a really weird haircut. But yeah, just to get into it for people who don't know, Elia Kazan, he's a great director, did A Streetcar Named Desire and On the Waterfront and a bunch of movies. But in the early 50s, he spoke to the House Un-American Activities Committee as part of the blacklist, the crackdown against communists and alleged communists in America, which was of course a big moment in Hollywood, a big watershed moment where a lot of people lost their jobs, especially a lot of writers lost their jobs. And Elia Kazan named names.
He's a fucking narc.
He is a fucking narc. He's a fucking narc. He named names. Some people probably lost their jobs because of him. And also, one of the reasons why he caught a lot of ire too, because he wasn't the only person, of course, who named names, but one of the reasons why he caught a lot of ire is he didn't just do that. He also then subsequently published an ad in the New York Times defending his decision and being like, my brief time as a communist in the 30s taught me that communists are bad people, and I'm proud to serve America, or something like that. I'm obviously completely paraphrasing, but anyways, he defended himself in a published ad in the New York Times. So he was very much not repentant about it, and insisted his whole life that he made the right choice, which put him on a lot of people's shit lists, especially some of those writers who lost their jobs because of the witch hunt that was going on in America at the time. And And that's why it was controversial. And I do like that as kind of a moment, like just to go back to the idea that it's kind of like at the end of history's Oscars, where we're celebrating the triumph of America as the global superpower or whatever. It really shows how there's kind of these ghosts of the Cold War that haven't been dealt with, at least domestically. Like there is havoc that has been wreaked in America in the Cold War, and at least some of the old guys in the room are still not over it. And we see some people refusing to clap for Elia Kazan when he comes out in the ceremony. We definitely see Nick Nolte and Ed Harris declaratively refuse to clap. I didn't see that, but apparently Jack Nicholson also refused to clap, though I didn't catch that in the video. Apparently Ian McKellen was among the people who refused to clap. Also, my girl Amy Madigan also apparently refused to clap. But the only ones I noticed watching were Nolte and Harris. So that's kind of one of those interesting moments from this in terms of those kind of like ghosts of the 40s and the 50s and the communist witch hunt era that a lot of those people were still around in the 90s, and Hollywood would rather move past all that as they're showing by giving this award to Kazan and bringing out a couple of legends in Marty Scorsese and Bobby De Niro to present it, to kind of try to show a united front of being like we're past all that stuff. But clearly not everybody is past that. And I thought that was kind of an interesting thing to see hashed out as part of an otherwise very cocky and celebratory night.
Yeah, totally.
Can I bring up something that strikes me as like a ghost of the peak end of history golden age that we can now relish in this age of like dying empire? Colin Powell. Holy shit.
Yeah.
That got I was watching this alone, and that got a legit what the fuck out of me, because this is like 4 years before telling the UN a bunch of lies, right?
Yeah. Before he was
crazy to me, though.
Yeah, because he was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff at that point, before he was the Secretary of Defense.
Yeah, he was Bush. Just like bombing aspirin factories in Sudan at Clinton's behest at this point.
And he got a huge build up for when he comes out, a huge ovation to present the two movies about World War II. So that feels for me too. That felt like such a moment of like tying current American military might to the Second World War as like this cultural project is bridging the two. That was kind of an eyebrow raising moment for me too.
Yeah, total time capsule.
Yeah. Oh man, was there anything else that, like Craig, that really made you sit up in your seat rewatching the ceremony?
I think like just I was impressed by Whoopi's job as a host. Like I think that she was a really great host for this. Not that that's like surprising in any way, but I feel like in the late 90s, early aughts, there was a run of like really great hosts for the Oscars. And, she was a part of that run. And this was a top tier example. Lots of costume changes. She kept it fun. This is also notable as for starting a curse, maybe not starting, but at least the Diane Warren curse is in full force here, where her song I Don't Want to Miss a Thing definitely should have won that Oscar and did not. It was like a song from the Prince of Egypt or something like that no one ever remembers, ended up winning that, and she has not been able to win a Oscar since, despite I think she's at 17 nominations now for Best Song, which is crazy. Definitely should have won that year and has been haunting the Oscars ever since. So, that's definitely notable for me. Also, I thought Norman Jewison's Thalberg Award speech was really charming. It
was funny. Yeah, it was cute.
I really liked that. But aside from that, we touched on the tap dance, which was a real what the fuck is going on moment here. John Glenn introducing a montage celebrating the millennium.
As Tom Hanks needing a shave introducing John Glenn.
Yeah. How about Val Kilmer leading a horse out to introduce a montage about dead cowboy actors?
So can we introduce him like they do in the pre-roll thing, which I believe was a respected actor, Val Kilmer, or maybe just famous actor Val Kilmer?
I think it was popular actor. I don't think it was. I don't think he said respected. I think they said popular.
Like none of his credits or awards, just this guy.
Yeah.
Our specialist boy.
I also the presence of Ian McKellen was touched on, but the film from that year of Gods and Monsters, that's what it was.
Yeah.
I think Brendan
Screenplay
Fraser
winner.
was in that, and I completely forgot that he had like a little bit of Oscar adjacent pedigree before his comeback with The Whale and
Monkey Bone.
yeah, Monkey Bone, Encino Man, George of the Jungle. There's like so many of those like really goofy, lowbrow family movies
Blast from the
that
past.
you associate Brendan Fraser with. But he he does have some like a historic range that he has been able to draw upon. So it was just fun seeing him at the ceremony with Ian McKellen and just having a little bit of a back and forth in the crowd. So I like that. Also,
I just to cut in there, I like Gods and Monsters winning the screenplay award because I like that movie. I think it's a good movie.
I haven't seen that movie.
It's good. It does feel a little bit like one of those forgotten 90 movies to me, but it's a pretty interesting one in my books. I haven't seen it in a long time, but when I saw it, I liked it.
I kept confusing it for a movie that is like a kind of a hagiographic account of a Confederate army in the Civil War, but I think that was Gods and Generals. But every time I hear Gods and Monsters, I'm like, wait, was that the Ted Turner funded?
But yeah, for me, when I first hear the name Gods and Monsters, I immediately am like, is that like a Clash of the Titans thing? It sounds like something with like cool stop motion effects. And it takes me a few seconds to be like, oh, right, the James Whale movie.
That was like a Jeff Buckley album.
Oh no, I think like aside from that, the other thing, since I am officially repping the nation of Brazil for our duration of the campaign season, I would be remiss to call out the fact that this was the Central Station year where Life is Beautiful beat out Central Station in best foreign film, and also Fernanda Montenegro probably should have won in best actress there because fantastic performance in that film. So go Brazil.
Just on the song, I know that they vote on this stuff beforehand, but do you think that Steven Tyler really clamming that note after the key change had anything to do with it not winning?
he shit the bed, huh? Steven Tyler
reached
kind of
for
shit
it
the bed.
and he failed.
Yeah, I kind of like the performance just because it's like it's rare that an Oscars performance really feels like a live performance. Like it really feels like they're kind of going for it and but he sucked, which my favorite performance because he kind of sucked, right?
That's why they do the pre-records now.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I don't know. Any other thoughts on the 71st Academy Awards?
No. Do we want to get into any sort of campaign news after this?
I have one trivia question, not as in here's a question I know the answer to, but can you think of other instances? Yeah. I feel bad. I forget her name, but she won, I think it was costume design for, was it Velvet Goldmine or whatever?
Yeah.
But was also nominated for, I think, Elizabeth or Shakespeare in Love. So I was trying to think of what are all the instances other than her and Soderbergh of people that have lost Oscars to themselves. Are there any other cases of that?
I feel like I don't know anything about costume design. I also can't remember her name, but that feels like the kind of category where you would see multiple nominations.
Powell?
I feel like there must be other years where there are the same person nominated for costume design because there are only so many doing like top tier Hollywood productions. You know what I mean? That's the one. And also I'm just spitballing here, but I feel like sound design could be a category where we might see the same
especially
person
when it was
nominated.
split.
Because the announcer will be like, this is his 7th nomination and the 5th time he shared it with.
Yeah. We're debuting the Best Casting Award at this Oscars, which is a new award that's starting.
Oh, sick.
That's
Can
one
they
that
retroactively go back to 1995 and give it to, I think it was Bonnie Timmerman for Heat?
I will check on that.
They should.
but I'm just saying that feels like a category that's going to be rife with the same person being nominated multiple times for the same year. Just because, again, like there's only like so many casting directors doing like big ticket Hollywood movies.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I can do the research and like throw it up on the screen if you really want me to do that during Christmas, Sean. But I can
I want you to spend at least a few hours on this.
Craig, you were saying you were wondering if we're going to get into some more race news or gossip. Was there something you wanted to bring up to cycle back to the year of our Lord 2025?
Well, I had some questions. So you brought up we were talking about movie stars not being like film like vehicles anymore, and you brought up Timmy.
Mm-hmm.
He is campaigning so hard, and he's getting people involved in campaigning. I think he's got Kris Jenner, who's like his mother-in-law or his girlfriend's mother, or there's some sort of like connection there, and she's been putting out Instagram stories and stuff like that. I'm curious as to whether you think this association with someone like the Jenners, who has an association with reality TV and something that is considered maybe a little bit more lowbrow than what the Academy like thinks of itself, whether that could potentially harm his campaign.
I think it definitely would before they reformed the voting body and lowered the minimum age or the average age down from like 93 or whatever the hell it used to be. I think now that the voting body is younger and more diverse than it used to be, I doubt that hampers him more than it hurts him. I'm sure there are some people who don't like his shtick or think he's trying too hard. He associates with the wrong people, whatever. He's campaigning in the wrong way. That was kind of, I think, one of the underrated storylines of last year was the way that Timmy really campaigned for an Oscar last year, but campaigned in a non-traditional way. Whereas Adrian Brody was doing the classic like meet and greets, like showing up to screeners, sitting down with Academy members. Timmy was doing very little of that. Instead, he was doing like a blitz of like podcast interviews and putting out a lot of reels that were like going viral and just being very present on like Instagram and TikTok and stuff, which ultimately ended up with him getting a Screen Actors Guild Award, where the voting body is younger, but he fell short of the Oscar. I think that's one of the things that really interests me about Timmy, because like I said earlier, is that he feels kind of like the first like next generation movie star who's selling movies based on his presence in them. Like, I know multiple people who went to the Bob Dylan movie just because it was a Timmy Chalamet movie, and that's a Bob Dylan movie. Like, it's not like it's not a movie about a fucking ping pong player.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting question. Like, but I feel like that helps him more than it hurts him, because I feel like the people who are like old and grumpy and don't like that stuff just aren't aware of it enough to like hold it against him. Whereas for the young people, they love that stuff. Like Gen Z like really likes Timmy Chalamet, and there's not like that many Gen Z people in the Academy voting body, but there are like a lot of like millennials, and I think he might get in trouble with his cockiness, because he does like to give interviews where he's like, I gave an amazing performance, and I've given like 7 amazing performances in a row, and I'm working really hard because I want to be the best in the game, and I'm going to be I want to be the best actor of my generation. And I think that stuff is playing really well with younger people, but that's obviously going to rub older people the wrong way to have this young kid talking like he thinks he's Brando. But in the fact that like he's dating Kylie Jenner, I think is not necessarily gonna register with like Clint Eastwood or whatever, because I think they're just not aware of it.
Yeah, I think the other interesting thing about like what Timothy has been doing this season is like he's notably not in the Variety's Actors on Actors series that they come out with. So it's interesting to see that he hasn't been there, but it's not like I don't know, he doesn't have like some fundamental opposition towards it, because I know that he's been on that in previous years. Like he was on there last year. I can't remember who he was paired with, but yeah, it's interesting that he's not doing that this year.
Yeah. No, it's definitely one of the award season figures. He's becoming the most interesting to me is him. And we've talked before on the show in like previous years too about like who's gonna be the next like Jack Nicholson or Leo DiCaprio or whatever. And I think I think we found him, and we wait and see what kind of a dude he actually is, and if he can. And first, he has to get a campaign over the line because he's got to get his first trophy first. But he's definitely has a strong chance of it this year.
I think the only other notable news aside from Rob Reiner passing away is I saw that Christopher Nolan hosted a 4-year consideration screening for Sinners. So the fact that Christopher Nolan, who's obviously like one of the most powerful directors in Hollywood right now, and I think he's even the head of the Directors Guild, is out there campaigning for Sinners, is making me think that this is really, really a rising campaign here. And I thought that Sinners was going to suffer as a result of how early it was released, but it seems like it's really building momentum. So interested in how that shakes out.
Yeah. All right. So what we want to do here on Oscars Outsider is every episode we will wrap things off with discussing one of the movies that are in contention, one of the movies that we expect to be a Best Picture nominee. Just do a little bit of old film criticism to talk about these things as actual movies. And I felt like for today, since we've been talking about the Shakespeare in Love Oscars, it just made sense that we talk about Hamnet, because Hamnet is the other Shakespeare movie, which is a presumed front runner for Best Picture, if not the front runner, but is definitely very, very much in the mix, and is also a story about Shakespeare, but a very, very different story about Shakespeare. I watched Hamnet a few days ago, and Craig, I think you just watched it too. Did you have any initial thoughts about Hamnet as a movie and not just as a contender?
So I don't know about you, but I did not exactly go into this film with an open heart for it. And I still wasn't like blown away with it. I wouldn't say I like it. I think that it's like definitely going to be towards the bottom of my list, but there were elements of it that I did like. I thought that the script was awful. I really didn't like the script. I thought that it was.
It's pretty.
You touched on the emotional manipulation of like Saving Private Ryan, for example. This felt very emotionally manipulative. Like there was so much where it's constructed for these like scenes where there's like where it's going to make you cry before you even care about the characters. And so there's just a lot of like emptiness in it, but there were certain things about it that I liked. Like I thought that I thought that some of the staging in it was really good. Like I like how it kind of alluded to the old like staging of like a theater production. I enjoyed that. Yes, some interesting choices in terms of camera angle. I also kind of feel like the use of symmetry was a bit overdone and in your face, and there was a little bit of inconsistency between like these locked off shots and then just cutting to these natural handheld, and it didn't seem like there was a lot of thought behind why it was doing it. But I thought that it built this tone of like foreboding horror just around the corner. It felt like there was impending doom just around the corner, and I thought that was pretty well done. Part of that could have been an artifact of the fact that I was watching this as God intended for it to be watched through like a downloaded cam version of it. But you got the Hamnet. Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I didn't hate it as much as I was expecting to. I thought Buckley was really great in it, But yeah, I really didn't like the script. I don't know. What did you think about it?
I would echo a lot of what you said. You know, when Jessie Buckley as Agnes, the movie's version of Shakespeare's wife, Anne Hathaway, is seeing Hamlet for the first time, and she sees him come out, and you know she's overcome by emotion, and she's got a tear streaming down her cheek, and she's watching with rapt attention. Do you think she's still watching it that way, like an hour and a half later, when Hamlet is like going on a comical rant for 20 minutes to the Player King about all the things he finds annoying about the way actors act in the theater? Like, I just like, you have to be so selective about what you show from Hamlet if you really want to tell the audience that this is just a raw expression of one man's grief. Like, and even in the selections that they are very selective, and even the selections that they show, they're still fudging them. Like in that scene where Hamlet comes out and they're like cast off they by knighted colors. They're referring to the fact that Hamlet is supposed to be dressed in black in that scene, but in the movie they have him dressed in blue so that you know he's supposed to represent the child Hamnet who is dressed in blue. So even in the moments they select, they're still fudging it to make it fit their narrative. That kind of bugged me because it's a simplification, and just because I'm not saying like it has to, like, I'm not saying that Hamlet is totally not a play written by a grieving man and his grief is not part of the text. Like, I'm just saying that part would be a part, but so much of Hamlet is like jokes and wordplay and satire and references that the movie asks us to imagine this play as having been written by like a reclusive, uncommunicative, moaning depressive living in like an attic somewhere. It just doesn't track. And the way that they have to simplify the character of Shakespeare so much in order for that like one angle that they want to get off on, that just like, it is just about somebody dealing with grief, and this movie is just about dealing with grief, and therefore the play Hamlet is just dealing about grief. To me, that's just part of that, like the real simplification of it, which I find kind of annoying. Like, Shakespeare in Love is obviously a wildly different movie and not necessarily any more historically correct. Like, Shakespeare in Love is also like gleefully ahistorical at times, and intentionally. Like, Tom Stoppard originally proposed an ending for the movie where Gwyneth Paltrow's character, when she washes up on shore, it would be like contemporary Los Angeles. Like, that was too meta for Harvey Weinstein's tastes, but the movie was obviously always conceived as like Shakespeare as a kind of striving screenwriter in West Hollywood, which is you know, ahistorical, but I feel like that's maybe more accurate than Shakespeare as like an autistic crust punk from Thunder Bay or whatever the version of Shakespeare we get in Hamnet is. Like, it just, having him be like so bad at like communicating and living in like a filthy hovel and just apparently having no friends or anything. Like, Shakespeare was a very popular writer in his age, working in this, like, in the cultural center of like the biggest, most cosmopolitan city in Europe at the time. His plays are just full of references to other works, and like, just it just doesn't make sense to present him as like just like this grieving recluse who can barely talk to another person. And the emotional manipulation for sure is a big deal. I'm talking about it like I hate it, but to be honest, I don't. Like, when we get to the big emotional moment at the Hamlet screening in the end, I saw it in the theaters. I got a little leaky. It got me. Like, it got me. Like, I was emotional. Even though
they use that song that's in like every movie.
Yeah. As a manipulative and cliche as it is, the idea of like, oh, like her grief is now being shared by other people who have gone through another experience, and the power of art is actually communicating to them. Oh, that got me a little bit. I thought it worked. I thought it was cheap, but I thought it worked. Also kind of weirdly similar to another Best Picture contender, which we'll talk about another date. I thought Sentimental Value, in terms of the conclusion of the movie. Yeah. Both movies kind of have the conclusion that are like, oh, this artist that you thought was just too aloof to address his feelings. Well, guess what? It turns out that him making a work of art about his feelings was actually the best way he could do it and the best way to deal with things. So how about that? Which I understand how that message resonates with artists. I'm not sure it's very healthy though.
But guess what? We've got a Real Housewife podcast, and we're not letting shitty men get off the hook for their behavior just because they think they're smart.
But I thought both movies had the same kind of like surprise reveal at the end, where it's like, oh, the artist is actually dealing with it in a healthy way by burying himself in his art, and now everybody can share in it. But Sentimental Value had so much more text building up to that point, whereas Hamnet felt very simplified and didn't love it.
Yeah, I didn't love it. Also, like, didn't hate it. I'm struggling to find like good things. I think it was just because like it had a few tricks in its pocket that, like you said, they were effective. I also I felt it was unnecessary for the kind of like the witchiness of the first half. Like, yeah, I get that there's, they're trying to make parallels with the supernatural elements of the play, but like it just it felt unnecessary. It took away from a lot of the humanity that they were trying to really kind of like tie the audience to, and I don't know. It didn't do it for me.
Yeah, for me too. For me also, the issue with the witchy stuff was that I feel like the idea is to try to put us in the world of somebody living in the country in the late 16th century, in the early modern era, where like witchy beliefs maybe would have been very widespread. That's actually kind of a controversial idea, but that's kind of like the Robert Eggers thing, where it's like we'll like present the world as they saw it. But I feel like when it's in like a Robert Eggers world, it makes the world feel more mysterious. Whereas in Hamnet, I thought it made the world less mysterious because her visions are basically right, so she can predict the future. And if somebody can predict the future, then the world is becoming less mysterious and more ordered in a phony way. So yeah, I also didn't necessarily love the witchy stuff. And the movie seemed a lot more invested in the witchy stuff than it did in like anything about Hamlet or William Shakespeare. So at a certain point, I'm like, why is it even about Shakespeare? Like Shakespeare in Love imagines Shakespeare being in the world and being connected to, the people who he relies on for finances and the actors and all this stuff. It shows him like, trying to raise funds and everything. Whereas in Hamnet is just like such a fantasy of him being like a reclusive artist, which just doesn't make sense from what we know of the world he would have had to have lived in, and the guy who would have had to have written those plays. And it just feels like a cop out to be like, oh, I'm going to make a story about Shakespeare, but actually not. It's just going to be about like this depressive recluse who we imagine somehow wrote Hamlet in an attic somewhere, and we're only going to show you a couple snippets that make it seem like it's all about him grieving his son.
Yeah. It felt almost like trying to have like the Usual Suspect style end, where it's like trying to pull all the strings together and make it like, and
it did, because there's only two strings.
Yeah, exactly. That's why it didn't work in the end.
Yeah.
Okay, we're on the same page on this one, I feel like.
I think so too, unfortunately. Yeah. We won't have any sparks flying here.
So how do you think that history would look at this film as a winner if it does end up winning?
So I picked Hamnet with my first pick, which was the second overall, because you had the first overall pick and you got One Battle After Another, just to resume. So obviously I'm high on its chances. And what I said when I picked it is what I stand by, which is I think that if One Battle After Another is seen as too politically charged and people start shying away from it because they think it's too much of a political statement film, or that it's too thorny, if Hamnet could be the kind of easy, familiar tearjerker that makes up ground because of the more thorny political movie has lost ground. So if Hamnet manages to win, I think that will be the narrative that people will take away from it, that it will be remembered as something like Green Book or Coda, as kind of a cozy crowd pleaser, tearjerker that nobody's going to be revisiting 4 years from now necessarily, but that ended up being the kind of easy movie to vote for voters.
Yeah, I think you're right. I feel like it needs a bit stronger of a narrative to get there even. I think the fact that Zhao already has a Best Picture under her belt, like, because there's an expanded field, there's so many other people that they could want to reward. And I think the fact that sentimental value seems like it's picking up so much steam is like maybe makes it almost easier to fill that hole. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering if whether Zhao's previous win works for her or against her, if whether people are more likely to be like, she's already got one, we don't need to vote for her again, or if they're going to be like, oh, well, it has the imprimatur of a known Oscar winner, so it's got that stamp of approval.
Yeah,
I don't know.
true.
I have no idea. We'll see.
How would you compare this to her past work, specifically The Eternals?
I have not seen The Eternals, unfortunately. I kind of like Nomadland, so I'm a defender of that win. I kind of like Nomadland. I don't love it, but I like it. McDormand is incredible in it. I like The Rider, her previous film, a lot more. I thought The Rider was actually really good. For me, that's still kind of the high watermark. Well, I guess I've only seen two of her movies. I've seen The Rider and Nomadland, so Eternals is still on the docket. Interesting that she's clearly changed cinematographers since The Rider and Nomadland. She knows what a tripod is now, so I thought that was kind of interesting.
How about performances? What do you think the odds are here in the acting categories?
Okay, so you touch on an interesting thing because they're pushing Paul Mescal as supporting, right? He's got a supporting actor nomination in the Golden Globes, so that's what they're pushing for the Oscars too. That's the one that kind of screams category fraud, don't you think?
Yeah.
He's a lead.
Yeah.
He's not a supporter. He's a lead. There's a male lead and a female lead, and they're basically the only people in the movie. So it feels like they're just nakedly trying to avoid Leo and Timmy by putting Paul Mescal in supporting instead. I'm calling category fraud on that all day long.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, we had a conversation about this during the last Oscars about Kieran Culkin, and I thought that was category fraud. The fact that, this is a male and a female that are like typically historically there's been male leads and female leads that have gotten in on the lead categories. And so, yeah, no, I agree.
Also, Chase Infinity for lead actress is category fraud too, but that's another discussion. She's supporting. They're trying to put her as lead so that they can put Tiana Taylor in supporting instead, and they don't compete with each other.
Well, spoiler alert.
But their odds are good. I think their odds are, anyways, for both Mescal and Buckley. They've both got to be front runners. And in terms of my personal opinion, they're both actors that I like a lot. I thought Paul Mescal was really good playing that filthy weirdo that they called Shakespeare. And Buckley, I usually like Buckley a lot. I didn't love her performance in this movie. Like, it worked in the sense that like she got me leaky eyed when she had to like do the tearjerker scene. I didn't necessarily love all her caterwauling and screaming and crying, but that usually is a good thing if you want to get an Oscar. Screaming and crying tends to help. But I wasn't super moved by it personally, but maybe that's just me.
Yeah, I kind of liked her more than him, but I thought they were both good. I don't know. I wasn't, again, not like completely blown away. I liked her better than him.
One more note on the actors, and then we're going to move off this because I think we're talking too long. But the kid actors were too good, and I hated them. I do not like when child actors are good, when they can act just like adults act, and because it's just transparent how much they're acting. It's very artificial to me, and I thought the kid actors, especially the kid who played Hamnet, were too good at their jobs, and I could not stand every moment that they're on screen. I was the one guy cheering when Hamnet died. It's not a spoiler; it's in the trailer because I
in the theater,
stomach
Dylan?
that action.
You monster.
Yeah. Well, I think that about does it, eh?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. All right. Good times. We'll be back doing another Oscars Outsider right before the Golden Globes come out. I'm going to do an episode where we're going to talk about the history of the Golden Globes. I thought that'd be really fun because the history of the Golden Globes is really weird, and that ceremony has been so fake and so corrupt and just so full of bullshit that I'm really looking forward to just digging into the weird history of Hollywood's fakest, stupidest awards show right before the new one drops.
Yeah, I am not an expert on the Golden Globe, so I am very looking forward to my education on this.
Nice. Can't wait. All right, we'll be back soon with that. Craig, got anywhere to point people before we move out of here?
Yeah, check out our website if you want to see our draft picks or how the points break down on our fantasy. It's oscarsoutsider.com. And then hit like and subscribe on YouTube or whatever podcast platform you are listening to this on. But yeah, I think that's about it.
All right. How about you, Sean?
Go watch Affliction and Paul Schrader movies in general. That's my plug.
Nice. All right. Thanks, Sean O'Rourke. I'm Dylan Ferguson. You can find me on Substack if you look for my name. I'll be trying to put up my favorite films of the year from among those I've seen within the next week because I usually do that. And we'll see you next time on Oscars Outsider.
Subscribe. You don't want to miss a thing.
And I don't want to miss a thing.
Nice.
So you're going to give us the clam.